In this video, we're going to cover some of the more boring topics, but probably the most critical topics that you should understand in order to avoid accidentally losing files. This is also going to enable you to collaborate with other producers using Ableton Live, and it's an introduction to my speed production workflow, where you can take the production process in smaller bite-sized chunks so that you don't feel overwhelmed, and you'll be able to organize your ideas in a searchable method using keywords and a folder hierarchy. So by joining this course, you also get access to my Elements template. So after you've signed up on the downloads page in your account, you'll have the ability to download the Elements template along with a bunch of other little goodies that I've updated over time. Now, once you've downloaded your Elements template and you're just getting set up with Ableton Live, you're going to need to do a few things that I recommend in order to keep your files all in one place and to install this Elements template. So let's first jump over to Ableton Live, and I'll give you a little input on the user library location and also the location where you can download Ableton Live's free packs if you are an Ableton Suite user. Okay, so looking at the Ableton interface here, we can see that on the left, we have this area under places called User Library. Your user library is going to look a little bit different because I've already installed quite a few things here, including sample packs, my Elements folder. But once we install your Elements folder into your user library, you're going to have a resource that will look fairly similar to what you're looking at here under Elements. So let's start by just talking about the difference between the user library location and your Ableton Live set location. Now, the difference is that the user library is a central source that Ableton Live will reference in order to get any of the tools, clips, saved presets, and factory packs that you've installed. You know, things that you use generally all the time while you're working on your music. Whereas on the flip side, when you're creating a new Ableton Live set, all of the files that should be in that set should also be in the Ableton Live project folder. So let me show you what I mean by this. So every time you start a new song, you should begin by saving that song in a specific location. For all my students, I recommend starting a folder on your desktop called Music Stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and, I've already got one, but I'm going to create one anyway. So I'll just create a new folder here on my desktop, and I'm going to call it Music Stuff. You can give it any name that means something to you, but in the context of this course, it's just going to be called the Music Stuff folder. Your Music Stuff folder is going to be where you'll save absolutely all of your new music that you're creating, all of your Ableton sets and projects, also your Ableton user library is going to be located in the Music Stuff folder. Now, the reason why I encourage you to put all of your files inside of one folder like Music Stuff is it gives you the opportunity to use some type of a cloud storage system to sync your files as a backup to whatever cloud storage service you're purchasing, whether that's iCloud or Dropbox or sync.com. Whatever you have, you can take that Music Stuff folder and place it inside of your cloud storage. And the benefit of this is that if you're working on a new track and maybe your computer explodes or whatever happens, you know that your Music Stuff folder, all of your music resources are being backed up in real time as you're working on it. So you might lose a little bit of data, a little bit of your time, but overall you're going to be able to rest assured that your music stuff, all of your creations, all of your tools, everything that you use to make music is going to be safe and sound. And if you need to pick up where you left off on somebody else's computer, you can just log into your online storage and you can download your Music Stuff folder, and you know that everything's going to be there. So now that I've added this Music Stuff folder on my desktop, if you have the option, I recommend dragging that over into some sort of a favorites tab. Then you know that you can access it fairly quickly and all of your music is going to be right at your fingertips so that you don't have to be looking around and hunting for your music anytime you want to make something new. You should be able to open up your Music Stuff folder, find the track you're working on, and get started working on music without much resistance. So we've got this music stuff folder. This is just a temporary one for the purposes of this course, and we're going to create our new song. So we've got a brand new Ableton Live set file here, and we're going to start off by saving this by pressing the keyboard shortcut Command S. It's Control S on a PC. And this is going to be the equivalent of going up to the file menu here and choosing Save Live Set. Now, because this is the first time that we're saving this, we're going to get the Save Live Set As menu. And this is going to give us the opportunity to give our set a name and choose where we're going to save the Ableton Live project. So I'm going to open up the music stuff folder. And now this is the folder that I've selected that will save this set in. So I'm just going to give this a name. I'll go Best Song Ever. Version 1. And once I'm ready and I've named this, I'll press enter or save. And now you'll notice if you put your cursor up in the top here, we have a little indicator that we've actually saved this set and it's located in a project folder. Now I know this because the name of the Ableton Live set is going to be out here outside of brackets, and then the project folder name is going to be right beside it with these brackets. Now this is going to be important to remember, and I'll reference back to this a little bit later in this video. So let's hop over to our desktop here and open up our music stuff folder so that we can see what we just did. So you'll notice that in my music stuff folder, I've created this black folder called Best Song Ever Version 1, and then Ableton Live is given the name Project. This is important because Ableton Live is a non-destructive editing software, meaning that when Ableton Live is editing certain sounds and samples, it's not actually changing the original audio sample. Instead, it's creating a copy of that audio and it's saving it inside of the project. So let's open up the project folder and we'll look inside. So now we can see that we have Ableton Project Info, and then we have another icon, a black icon, looks like a little page with the corner fold down, with the file type as .als. That's Ableton Live Set. Ableton Live Set. Now this is important to remember because there's a huge difference between an Ableton Live Set file and a project file. Just remember that for every brand new song you create, it should also have a project folder all to itself. I'm going to repeat that because it's so important. For every new song you create, you should also have a new project folder for that song. You're doing it wrong if you find that you have one project folder and then inside of the project folder, maybe you have multiple Ableton Live set files with different names. That means that you've been saving all of your new songs into the same project folder as the last time you created a new song. I'll be drilling that into your mind as often as I possibly can because, horror story, I've worked with producers before that didn't pay any attention to this tip, and they created a bunch of really amazing music over the period of a year or two. And after a while, this one project folder filled up with probably like 100 different songs and all of the audio content that came along with those songs. That folder ended up being over 150 gigabytes in size, and he could no longer continue working on any music because it had filled up his internal hard drive. And so it took hours to go in and split all of the samples out of each song, and it was just a really big hassle. So once again, every time you start a new song, you should have a new project folder. Let me show you. So I'm going to start a new song. I'm going to go up to the File tab and choose New Live Set. You could also use Command N on a Mac or Control N on a PC, but I'll just use the File menu for now. So I've created a new Ableton Live song. The first thing I'm going to do, just as a review, is I'm going to use Command S to save or Control S on a PC. That's going to be like hitting Save As. Now look what happened here. Ableton Live is prompting me to save this new Ableton Live set back to the last location that I saved. This is where people get into trouble because it is a convenient feature, being able to save your new item in the last location that you had saved, especially if you're saving with different versions of the same song, like I'll encourage you to do later on. But this will also trap you, and if you're trying to move through this quickly, you might not notice that you're saving your new song in the last project. So the way that you avoid this is by choosing the music stuff folder again, so that you know that you're saving it directly into that music stuff folder. You can give it a new song name, version 1, and hit save. And now we'll look up at the top bar, new song name v1, inside of the project folder, new song name v1. Now what happens if I accidentally save this in the wrong folder? Let me show you. I'm going to create a new Ableton Live set using Command N this time, or Control N on a PC. So we've got our new Ableton Live set here. It's called Untitled. And I'll press Command S to save. And instead of saving it in its own project folder, I'm going to save it in the last location that I had saved. So bad, not good, version 1. I'll hit save. Now look what happens to the title up at the top. So the name of the set is Bad, Not Good version 1, and it's located in the project folder new song name version 1. So this, if you see that this is happening, I highly recommend that you jump back into your Ableton Live's your music stuff folder and just do a little bit of research, find out what's happening, and then we'll split this out. So if this is the case for you already, what you can do here is actually grab the Ableton Live set file, drag it out of the folder, so that now we've just got an Ableton Live set file just kind of out open on its own. But this ALS file is still referencing the files that are inside of the last project folder that it was saved in. So we have to change that. So we're going to just open that up, and we'll have a look. See, now it's not in any folder whatsoever. We're going to go up to File. We're going to choose Collect All and Save. We'll choose files from elsewhere, files from other projects. I'm not going to choose files from the user library because the user library is in the same folder that it will always be. I'm also going to choose No on files from factory packs for that same reason. I'll hit OK. And there we go. Live set you're about to save is located outside of a project folder. Live must save the set into a project folder. Please choose a project folder to save the set into. Perfect. I'll press Save As. And we're going to keep this where it is located in the music stuff folder. I'll press Save. Replace. And now when we hop over here, we can see that we've created a new project folder with Bad, Not Good version 1 located inside. We can delete the previous version of Bad, Not Good. I know that this can be a little bit complicated and a little bit unusual to get used to, but if you have any questions, be sure to ask me when we have our next online session together. Now let me show you what it looks like when you have an Ableton Live project that's already been populated by samples. And just have a look at this project folder. So you can see that this is the project folder. It contains 3 or 4 different versions of the same song. And we also have a few extra folders inside that have been automatically generated. So just as a review, these are the Ableton Live set files. And you'll notice that in our workflow, I'll encourage you to save a version of the song that you're working on every time you start a new session, or every time you decide that you're about to make some big change, like deleting a big track or changing the tempo, or something where it's a bit of a milestone that you might want to go back to if your experiment just doesn't end up working. So when you've been working on an Ableton Live set for a while, Ableton Live will be automatically backing up your projects periodically and at random times. Now, Ableton Live will keep a certain number of backups on hand for you, but after a certain time, the oldest backups will start getting deleted. And that's why I encourage you to save versions of Ableton Live sets as you're working through, because they'll be saved at more meaningful points in your production process. And then you can just guarantee that those backups, those versions, aren't going to be deleted automatically by Ableton Live. Now, the exports folder is something that I add in. Anytime I'm finished with a song and I'm exporting some final versions, I'll create an exports folder inside of the project folder, and that's where all of my final bounces go. And we'll talk about that a little bit later when we get into exporting. Now, these vocal samples, I recorded on my phone. So I just recorded the samples on my phone and I airdropped them to my computer. And because these samples are going to be a part of my Ableton Live project, I made sure to put them inside of the project folder so that they wouldn't get lost. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. Finally, the samples folder at the bottom here is something that Ableton Live generates as you start adding audio samples into your session. And there are a few different folders inside of the samples folder. This is just two of a few, but we have processed. So anytime I'm processing files by consolidating, freezing, and reversing, the copies of those files go into this folder. And we'll talk about freezing and consolidating a little bit later on. We already know how to reverse files. And then also recorded files. So if I'm doing any audio recording, the files need to go someplace so that Ableton Live can reference them, and this is where they belong. Now, I mentioned earlier on that if you are bringing any audio files into your Ableton Live session, you should always move the original file inside of the project folder of the song you're working on. Now, I've spoken to so many producers and so many students that are in the habit of downloading some sort of audio sample from online or what have you, and then they get really excited to start working on it. So what they do is they go into their downloads folder. They let's just say that I'm in my downloads folder right now, and you grab an audio file and you're really excited about it. You don't put any thought into where this audio file is originating from, and you just drag it into your Ableton Live session and you just drop it onto the timeline. Boom. Okay, great. You make an amazing track using the audio sample that you pulled from your downloads folder. You save the project, and then when you decide one day that you need to clear out your downloads folder and you delete that file from there, suddenly you're going to get an error that looks something similar to this. And we can't play the project because the sample is offline. And down at the bottom here, Ableton Live is telling us that media files are missing. Oh no, we deleted that file. And now our Ableton Live project is ruined. We could go find the file, download a new one, what have you, but if you're feeling inspiration to get back and work on this song, I'm pretty sure the last thing that you're going to want to do is track down some missing audio files. So let me show you the best practice for adding files into your project. So let's just say we're going to do a remix of this Hansel Vox audio file, and we've downloaded it from the internet, and we're getting pretty excited. So I'm gonna head over to my music stuff folder, and let's say Bad Bad Not Good is the project that we're gonna be using for remixing this. What we're going to do is move the original audio file into that project folder. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that into there. So now that file is located inside of the project of the song that we're working on. And now that that file is inside of there, we're able to copy this over into Ableton Live if we want. Or we can even go into Ableton Live, look into the current project folder under places, and you'll see that Ableton Live has conveniently placed the Hansel Vox 06 file in there for us. So we could just drag that right in, make it really easy. And the benefit of this, of course, is that you're never going to end up losing that file. It's always going to be inside of your project folder. So if you're collaborating with somebody, you could just grab this project folder and share it with your buddy. And if they have all the same plugins and devices and things, then they'll be able to open this up and start working on it with no problems, no missing media, and everybody's happy. Let's talk about analysis files. Now that I've dragged this file, hanselvox.wave, into my Ableton Live set, we get this file that has the same name, but the file type is different, .asd. The file here is an analysis file. And basically what this file contains is information about the waveform, how it looks, the little graphic that we get of the waveform. It gives us information about the title of the track, the tempo of the track, everything that Ableton Live needs in order to allow us to manipulate this clip. So if you're planning on DJing in Ableton Live and you've dragged in a whole bunch of tracks that you're prepping for your Ableton Live set, and you notice that your USB stick or what have you is getting cluttered up by these .asd files, don't delete them, because anytime that you spend quantizing and warping and preparing your audio files for your set, all that information is saved in the .asd files. And if you delete those, then you're going to be in bad shape when you start to load up your Ableton Live set and you've got 10 minutes before you go on. So those are important. That's what those are for. The analysis files give you all the pertinent information about the audio that's in your Ableton Live set. So let's talk about the user library a little bit. The user library is almost like a system folder that just saves all of your like Ableton Live presets, samples, defaults, like any of the things that are custom to you. But what happens is a person might have a bunch of samples and things like that in their user library, and they've created a new song that they want to collaborate on with somebody, and because their collaborator buddy doesn't have the same items in their user library, your buddy is going to end up getting another missing media error. Later on in this video, we're going to talk about collaborating and the best ways to do so, but we'll get there when we get there. So here we go. We're going to have a look at Ableton Live's Preferences panel. So you can either go up into the Live drop-down menu and choose Preferences, or on a Mac you can choose Command, comma, and on a PC it's Control, comma. So what we're looking at now is the Preferences panel, and we've got a lot of options here related to our audio input and output, our buffer speed, latency, link, tempo, file folder, plugins. We'll be talking about all of these in greater detail in a later video, but right now what we're interested in looking at is the Library tab. The Library tab is going to allow us to choose where the user library is and where our packs are going to be saved if we're downloading factory packs from the Ableton website. So you can see I already have the location of my user library selected, but I'm going to just walk you through that anyway so that you can see the process. For you, you'll press the Browse button, and then what you'll do is find your music stuff folder that you created. I'm going to go ahead and press Open, and this has now updated the address for my user library to my new location. I'm also going to adjust the location of the factory packs so that it's in that same location. So I'll just hop over to the music stuff folder, and we'll just go ahead and press Open, and here we go. So now it's all arranged in my music stuff folder, and if I use some type of cloud storage, then all of the important information that I keep about my workflow is going to be saved in my custom user library. Now, if you get the option to add color tags, I usually like to add some color tags just so that I can be reminded quickly that this user library is important and that you shouldn't delete it. So the next step to this process is adding and installing your Elements template folder. This is going to help you further stay organized in your workflow, and it'll allow you to organize your ideas in a searchable way. So let me show you how we're going to do this. If for some reason you have to quickly find your user library, a quick way to access it is to just right-click on the user library icon and choose Show in Finder, or if you're on a PC, it'll be Show in Explorer. So after you've downloaded the Elements template, all we're going to do is just grab that folder and drag it into your user library. Now that it's located in your user library, you can remove the name template at the end. This is just for my own purposes. Now that the Elements folder is in your user library, you're going to be able to see it inside of your Ableton Live browser. Let me show you. So here's mine, Elements. I'm going to open this up for you so you can see what it looks like. And you'll notice that we have these various numbered folders and a few other extra folders that I'll walk you through right now. So the concept with this workflow is that when you're working on new music, sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming. You have to give yourself some credit when you're working on Ableton Live or any other DAW, because in a typical band scenario, for example, maybe you're a bassist or you're a guitarist, all you're responsible for is showing up, picking up your guitar, and playing that guitar. Maybe you sing too, but that's really only 2 elements of the entire songwriting process. Whereas for you on Ableton Live, if you're making a full-on production, you're in charge of the harmony, the melody, the drums, the effects, the mixing engineer, the mastering engineering. All of these elements could take a single person a lot of time and a lot of effort. So when you sit down at Ableton Live, sometimes it can be very discouraging if you have the mindset that you're going to sit down and quickly write a banger just, in one session. That's not usually how it pans out. Of course, there are exceptions to that rule where you might sit down and be completely inspired and you just come up with an amazing idea right away and you blast out a song in like 4 hours. That does happen. But usually leading up to that point requires a bit of pre-work. Maybe you're creating small clips and loops in advance, or you're spending some time creating the concept so that when you sit down on your computer, you can just execute your plan. Now, when you sit down at your computer, and especially when you're going through this course, I encourage you to set a timer and spend an allotted amount of time focusing on one category at a time. Most of the time, a song is comprised of the following elements: rhythms, chord progressions, melodies, bass lines, effects, vocals, and sometimes some song samples. So that's why I've added these folders inside of your Elements folder. This is going to give you a little bit of a shopping list. So if at any time you're wondering what you should do next or what you should focus on, you can have a look at that shopping list and you can say, oh, well, maybe I'll create some chord progressions for the next 30 minutes. Now, you'll notice that the names of these folders are a little bit complicated looking, but you might already be picking up the purpose for this. So this is actually a naming convention that we're going to be using on all of the ideas that we're creating and placing inside of our Elements folder. Now, the reason why it's important to abide by this naming convention is that this gives us the ability to sort our Elements folder into categories that work together. For example, if I'm sitting down and I want to start a new song and I'm looking for, making something that's in like C minor, for example, I can see that I have a melody in C minor. I also have some type of a chord progression in C minor. And now this gives me the ability to just grab these pieces, drag them into my timeline, and combine them very quickly. And since I've already got a chord progression done and a melody done, if these sounds work together, then I can just focus on maybe doing the bass line next, maybe the effects, what have you. So I've included a few different keyword types just to make the searching process a little bit more concise. You might not have all of these keywords available to you depending on what type of component, what type of element you've created. But generally, the information that you should include in each of these clips that you're creating is the BPM, the key, the mood, and a description of the piece that you've added in. So an example might be 224 BPM underscore C minor underscore melancholy, reflective, sad, hyphen, chill hop, drum beat. Now that's going to allow you to search things by the mood, by the key, by the BPM, and you can just use those pieces quite easily going forward, especially if you're like me and you've got, a pretty big collection of ideas here, It's just, you can sit down, you don't actually have to save an Ableton Live project folder or anything like that. You can just sit down, make a clip, throw it into your user library in your Elements folder, and then you can be done the session. Pretty awesome. This is what we're going to be doing for the entirety of this course, and for every one of the creative practices and exercises. You know that you've accomplished the task at hand when you have an additional clip inside of your Elements folder. So keep that as your focus. So if you haven't already, I recommend going through some of the songs that you've already created and just drag those pieces into the Elements folder. So for example, I could, take this melody and say 224 BPM. I usually don't add a space in between just so that it makes it a little bit more searchable. I'll put an underscore there, C minor, underscore. This will be upbeat, melodic, dreamy, hyphen, something that I'm going to delete after this video is done. And now I can open my Elements folder and grab that melody, drag it into the Melodies folder, and you can see that now it's been organized along with all of my other melody ideas.